All right, guys, Working Class on DeerCast. We're back in studio after our trade show run. So I don't know. We did the Turkey OG series, had some good feedback on that. So I appreciate you guys supporting and being a part of what we're doing here on Working Class Bowhunter and DeerCast. And this week is kind of a fun, more relaxed one. Somebody that if you listen to Working Class Bowhunter series often, you know Damian from there. He's part of Team WCB and a good friend of ours. So welcome to the DeerCast version of Working Class, the PG version, Damian.
Heck yeah. Happy to be here. It's an honor.
Well, I'm glad to have you. You helped us out at a lot of the shows this year. You came out to the Harrisburg, PA show and helped us out there for a few days, and in Columbus, Ohio. So big help, man. I appreciate you coming out and just having a good time with us.
Those the shows on my side of that, you get there and help out a day or two and you're ready to go home. I didn't have to do the full grind like you guys. So,
yeah. Well, we appreciate any help, man. They're always a good time to hang out and see everybody and stuff like that. Right. But it is a grind. It's mentally taxing by the end of it.
Sure.
But it's also weird because you're talking hunting, you're talking with hunters in that community. So you're enjoying it and you don't really realize how tired you are until like the end of the day. Because, you can't be in a bad mood because that might be how someone judges you that one time they met you,
That guy's a jerk.
Yeah. And when in reality, it was 3 minutes of when I was just a little overwhelmed and needed to drink a beer or something like that. But anyway, man, shout out to you for helping. But, dude, we did a podcast with you on Working Class. Oh, I mean, heck, it's been...
It was July.
So not quite...
No, was it? Yeah, July, because we wanted it to launch in August just before elk season. So
yeah,
it was late July.
So I guess we're going to follow up with how your elk hunt went. I know you had some good luck, and then I want to talk a little bit about whitetails, and if we have time, some turkey stuff. We've been hitting the turkey stuff pretty heavy. So I don't know if that's as necessary. You just got some in the background, like you've killed a few birds, it looks like. So well, let's dive into some elk stuff.
I'm on Team Eric with the turkeys. But.
Yeah, you're not a turkey fan. But Eric's killed one turkey, and he's like, yeah, I'd like to kill him with a shotgun, and I'm good. But
yeah,
I don't know. But let's talk elk. Let's talk elk first. That's the most first in line and most relevant to that last episode.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was an awesome trip. It kind of went with every expectation and hope that I had going out there again. And we got set up in camp. We drew a New Mexico second archery tag. We got there the day before season opened and got the camp and got everything set. We kind of went out that night, listened for some bugles, didn't hear a whole lot, but it was kind of windy. The next morning we went out right at daybreak, got into elk, got onto a nice bull, and we kind of headed him off. And the first bull we got on, he was probably a 315, 320 type bull, but he had gigantic fronts, a little bit weak on the tops. And I like big tops. To me, that kind of makes a bull elk. And he just, for the first bull out of the gate, I wasn't ready to go that route.
Yeah, what class were you looking for? If you're saying these 315, 320,
like a 330 or better is kind of where I was hoping. And to be honest, I say that one was 320. He was probably like 310 with his fronts and weak tops. He probably wasn't quite 320 type bull. And then got onto a raghorn, and then we got a glimpse of a bull just topping over the ridge, and we tried circling around him, got in on him, and never bugled, never heard him. And then we were actually heading kind of back towards our spike camp, and heard a bugle, kind of half-hearted bugle out, and we assumed it was a bull in his bed, and started stalking in on him. And the guide kind of hung back, and I just stalked in, and the bull would bugle like once every 5 to 10 minutes. And I got in tight on him with less than 100, but he was bedded in this drainage, and I couldn't see him. It was kind of thick in there. And I pulled out my bugle and I ripped the bugle, and he answered right back. And I thought, okay, he's going to circle downwind of where I just called from. So I tried to like jockey a few yards to get downwind to where I was at before he could, come up and get downwind to me. And I no more than took a few steps and he was on the other side of the canyon already, like walking away. He had no interest in any of it. He just bugled at us and he was leaving, and he was a giant, like 365 type bull.
Yeah, it's a lot of antler.
Yeah, it was like when I saw him, and his body was just enormous, like his chest and his neck, and he was just a monster bull. And he never saw me.
Did anybody else you were with know of that bull, or did they not know just by what?
The outfitter, the way elk are, they summer in an area, then they breed in an area, then they'll winter in an area. And the outfitter that we were with, he had velvet photos of him from his summer grounds. He didn't typically breed in that area, but the unit we were in had a lot of rain that year. And from what he was experiencing, the bulls had shifted kind of from where they typically breed. They shifted about a mile or two from where they normally had been breeding to like different areas. For whatever reason, he thinks it was just food. They were where they wanted to be versus where food had them.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
So that was his estimation on it. So that bull, he didn't know where we were there. He had no clue. He just didn't want to be around other bulls, and he just kind of walked off slowly. That evening, we went, tried to get on him. Couldn't find him. And we got in on this other bull that was just screaming his head off and raking in this thick stuff. And I kind of left the outfitter back, and I went stalking in on the thick stuff. And the bull was just, every minute or two, he was screaming, and you could hear him raking. And I just started easing in on him. And the next thing you know, I'm 27 yards from the 6x6.
Jeez.
Just no clue I was there.
Yeah.
And it was the most exciting, I think, elk hunt that I've had, including kills, just because I didn't know what this bull was, and I'm moving in on him, and I could see just a patch of like tan through the thicket, and I could see the tree shaking he was raking on. And I knew if I got up to this one juniper and just took a step to the left, it was going to be wide open. Yeah. So I got up to that juniper, and he's still just ripping into this tree, and I just ease around left-hand side, and he's there broadside, wide open, just awesome, and I stood there for 13 minutes filming him on my phone, and he bugles and chuckles, and he's raking. I'll send you some of the video you can attach to it. And it was just amazing. And he wasn't quite what I wanted. He was probably a 300-inch bull. Nice.
Which is still real big, yeah, like you're saying.
Yeah, he's still a great 6x6, but the unit we drew was, a pretty stellar unit. So he kind of finally just kind of went off, never knew we were there. Next day, we got in, we went back out, and did we see the big one? Yes, that's the morning. So that morning, very next morning, we're going in, we're in this canyon, and these bulls are bugling, and they're on the opposite ridge, and we're kind of tailing them on the opposite ridge, and we were going to head them off. And when it finally got daylight and we could lay eyes on him, it was like the one screaming his head off was like the 365 bull. Now this is only 24 hours from the morning before when I saw him, and he wanted nothing to do. Yeah. 24 hours later, he had 6 cows with him, 2 satellite bulls, and he was just incredibly vocal, like total change of personality in 24 hours.
It's like, what happens with him that like he was just by himself all of a sudden? He's like, yep, I'm going to go find my women, and then just drug all the other bulls along with them. It's like,
yeah, well, typically the way the elk are, the young bulls go in and they'll herd up the cows. And then when the breeding gets right, the big bulls sweep in, push the little bulls out, and take over the herd is basically how a lot of them.
It's kind of a good setup for if you're a big mature bull.
Correct. Yeah.
Dang. Okay.
So they were kind of heading to the saddle. So we dropped off, and we were going to kind of try to beat him to that saddle to cross over the ridge. And we got about 250 yards from him, and all hell broke loose. And the big giant bull got into a fight, the guide, who was probably 400 yards behind us, filmed it from across the ridge. The bull that I stalked in on the night before, and that giant bull got into a knockout, drag out fight. And I mean, they were going at it. It was amazing. They were like, on his video, there's like a line of trees, and they were both on opposite side of the trees, and they're just paralleling one another, going back and forth, just aggressive. And then when they came down to the end of the juniper and they had an opening, they just came together and just crushed it. And it was amazing.
He has that on video?
Yeah, he has on video. I have it on my phone too. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, we got to put it on here.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. And we got to the saddle just in time for the cows. Now that they're locked up, this little 5-point was trying to push the cows away to take them for himself. And we got to the saddle, and the cows topped over. And in hindsight, I should have just ran at that bull because he was only 170 yards from us. They were so preoccupied, I could have ran right in on him and probably shot him. And but I thought, well, he's just going to follow the cows. Well, the fight ended, and sure enough, he came through and he topped the ridge. I had a lane I could shoot probably 80 yards if he walked in it, and he crossed the saddle behind the only tree that was there. So that was that day.
At least you found the big bull again. At this point, it's probably what you're thinking. Like, he's in the area. He's not really going too far from his cows, I guess.
So the next morning, I actually got in with Isaiah. Isaiah had a baby the day before we got there, who was the owns the outfit.
Shout out to him.
So, yeah, right. Got it done. And
it's efficient right there.
He was out there. He had a baby. The day we were driving out there, he had the baby. 2 days later, he's in the mountains with us elk hunting. So it was pretty diehard.
Two things. Either his wife is a saint, or he just didn't care that much. I'm going with his wife's a saint. Yeah.
She understands. And it's one thing, like, I guess for him, it's his passion, but it's also his livelihood. So it's not just fun. Hey, honey, I want to go elk hunting. I know you just had a baby. It's, honey, I got to go make a living. You know?
I got to pay for this baby now.
Right.
Yeah. So
we, the next morning I got with him, and we went in and tried to find that big bull. Couldn't find him. We covered a lot of ground that day, and had no luck. We did get back in and stalk back in on the bull that got into the fight with the big one, and the one that I stalked in on. He had some cows with him, and he was still in the area. And that kind of got late into the morning. He was bugling in this thick cove in this bottom, and by the time we figured out it was him, it was getting late in the morning. But every time he would bugle, this bull probably 3/4 of a mile to a mile away would answer him back. And when we finally broke off of that stalk, we were sitting there, and that bull bugled again on his own. I'm like, you want to go after him? He's like, he'll probably stop bugling by the time we get there. I'm like, well, there's no way to know for sure unless we go try, right? What else are we going to do? Sit here under the shade, waiting for him to evening. So we headed that way. We cut the distance, and we had dropped down in elevation a good bit, and he hit the bugle, and he answered, but it was just barely audible. So we knew he was on the backside of the ridge that we were heading to. So we dropped down, headed up, got to the top of that ridge, and we eased up, and there was a big, like, brushy bowl, and he was going to bugle just to kind of locate him and see where he was at. And just as he was raising the bugle to his mouth, you heard you heard the bull just go, and he was 100 yards from us. Yeah, like he just groaned in his bed for whatever reason. And so he was like, we knew he was right there, and it seemed like he was alone. So Isaiah said, go pick a spot, go get set up. I'll back up and make a couple cow calls, see if we can pull him over here. So, elk, a lot of times when they're coming in, they'll stay on the same elevation and just side hill around to where they're going, right? So I anticipated that. So I got the wind in my favor, and I dropped down to an elevation that I thought was just below where he was at. And Isaiah made like 2 very faint cow calls.
How nervous are you at this point, Damian, when like dang, this bull's like this close. You know what I mean? Because then it's game time.
It's exciting, but you didn't know what he was.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's true.
You don't get overly excited because you haven't seen antlers. It could be the giant. It could be a 5-point. It could be a spike. You know, you just we're never close enough to hear his bugle to see if he had any like growl to it or anything, because he was always bugling off in the distance. So we had no idea what we were getting into, other than there's a bull here within 100 to 120 yards of us.
Yeah.
So got set up. Isaiah made a couple just incredibly faint cow calls, and he bugled immediately. Like I'm surprised you could hear it, because I could barely hear it, and I was, you know, much closer than what he was. And the next thing you know, I hear footsteps and I can hear rocks rolling. And if you've ever been out to New Mexico, like the juniper brush, like if you get down to the ground, you can almost look under it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's like the bottom 2-3 feet of it's kind of died out.
Yep.
Doesn't get sun, so you can kind of see through it. And I could see his legs moving, and he's side hilling, coming around. Still have no idea what he looks like.
Elk are so loud too. Like I've been around them, and it's like they're quiet when they need to be quiet, but if they don't care, it's like horses or cattle coming through.
Yeah, 100%. And he hits a tree, starts raking it a little bit, and lets out a bugle and starts coming around the hill. And I can tell he's coming right around where I kind of expected him to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 10:45 in the morning at this point. So sun is straight up over top of us pretty much. And it's starting to get warm. And he walked through a small opening, and I just saw big tops and a 7th point on the right side. And at that point, I was already confirmed I'm going to shoot this elk.
Yeah, you're in.
I'm all in at this point, right? And so, you know, I had no clue really what he was, other than the big, beautiful tops that he had in that 7th point on his right side. And he started coming in, and he's kind of quartering to me. And now I get a good look at him, and he's just a really nice bull. And he's going through some semi-thick stuff that you couldn't, you know, it wasn't shootable stuff. And he was just getting ready to walk behind the last juniper bush. And I had like a 30-yard wide lane that I could draw. And I'm kind of, my back's into this juniper, and my bow is in front of me, and I felt like I was in the shade. Well, when I extended my arm, my bow went into the sun. Mm-hmm. And I think I started drawing just a split second too soon. And I think he caught that movement, and he stopped, he took a step back, and he swung his head out around the tree and was just staring at me through a hole about the size of a basketball. And I'm like stuck at full draw now.
Yeah.
I did hit record on the Tacticam, and it's not the greatest video because there's a bunch of stuff in between. But from the time I hit full draw, and at 1:30 at full draw, I'm starting to lower my bow to set it on my leg to
rest.
To rest. And he's staring me down. And at this point, he's like, yeah, something's not right here. So he turns to leave. And this is, I know you're not a fan of the Garmin sight, but when he had his whole head in that hole, I ranged his face, and he was 35 yards, and it set my pin at 35 yards. And when he turned to leave, he turned broadside, and I brought my bow up, and he caught that movement again, and he turned to look back at me, and I smoked him. And he ran 100 yards, and you could hear him kind of struggling, and and you hear him like cough. And I went up to Isaiah, and we kind of sat there for a few minutes, and we ended up giving him an hour just to be. They're such big animals, and we walked up there, and where we last heard him, he was laying there. So he's a big 6x7. I scored him. There's controversy on the score. So I scored him at 320. One guide scored him at 3.9. Isaiah scored him at 308. And then I had a Pope and Young scored him at 219 or 319. So he's somewhere in the 315 to 320 range. Right. I don't know.
I won't measure him. Don't ask me, Damian.
But he was a great bull. He didn't hit the 330 mark I was hoping for, but
you know what? 10 inches, like really on that much antler in that moment.
And he has everything to be a 330, but his thirds are a little bit short. That's what it kept him. And his one, honestly, if you look at him, his one beam is about 4 inches shorter. So if you had 4 inches on one beam and a couple inches on each third, he was right there at the 330 mark. So I'm not disappointed. He's still an awesome bull. And then my buddy was still hunting. He actually shot and missed at that giant 365 bull. Oh, we had that bull with him under 80 yards 5 times and couldn't get a shot at him. Like, it was just cat and mouse in the thickets. And, the next thing you know, a cow comes around the bush and you're staring her in the face at 15 yards and she takes the herd. And, there's Isaiah sent a really awesome water hole video from the trail cam that he got, where this bull this herd of like 15, 20 cows go running into it. And then he comes trotting into the water hole right after him, which was a couple days after we had left. And it's a pretty awesome video. So, and then the very last day, my buddy Dave, he shot just a stud 6x6 as well. So, I mean, we went 2 for 2. Isaiah, we're 100% going out there with him.
Are you really?
I mean, it's just, the guy's on it.
Hearing some stories about him from the other episode we did last summer, he just sounds like an awesome guy. He's a real young guy too, isn't he?
He's about your age.
Okay. So really young.
30, 31, 32, in that ballpark.
Yeah.
But, it's shed season right now, and he's out there collecting sheds. And, he did a video with Hush, and where they did like a pack-in antler, hunt. And I think they came out of the woods with like 600 pounds of antler.
How fun would that be, going to find elk sheds?
Yeah, all day long. And they're finding these giant sheds, and they're like, oh, this one's chalk. We're not going to pack it out.
Yeah, it's like, no, hey, no. I want that. Bring that home.
Right, I'll take that chalk.
It's funny. I might actually go out and look for elk sheds, depending on if I can get out or not, with the boys from Buckstorm in South Dakota. I probably won't find as big or as many sheds as they're finding down there. Sure. But I was just, talking about, just a little bit separates a bull from being 310, 320, 330. I was holding some of their elk sheds, and my buddy Trey Heiner from Grays River Outfitting was up there, and I'm going on an elk hunt with him this September, and so is Austin and Austin's dad. And I'm like, what can I expect as far as like caliber of bulls? Because for me, I've measured a 300-inch bull for a guy here in Illinois, and I'm like, man, that's a great bull. I'd be tickled pink with a 300 class bull. And he said, depends where we're at. There's a couple areas. He's like, you could shoot a bull that's 330. He goes, I think you have a 300-inch bull in your face for your first one, you'll shoot it. And I'm not going to be overly picky, but that 300 mark's where I'd like to be.
And that's a good place to be. But in reality, having done it and experienced it, and you get like a solid any 6x6 in front of you, you're probably going to smoke them. You know what I mean? To go out there and just say, nah, I'm going to hold out for the 300. It's a great, that was my expectation on my first elk hunt. And I ended up shooting a 4x4. Yeah. And then the second time I went back out, I wanted to shoot a 300, and I shot like a 275, 280, a 6x6, so that progression, when you're a whitetail hunter and you see that much antler, it's hard to turn that down.
Oh yeah. I mean, you got to train yourself, it's just like how guys out east come to the Midwest and they think they're shooting 150s, and not all the guys, but you hear the famous story of, I thought he was 150, but he's like 125. It's like, well, I get that, it's just, you're not used to it. So same thing with elk, and it'll take me a few hunts, I'm sure, before I'm like stone cold holding out for a 320 or whatever, but I told Trey, I'm like, that's where I'd like to be, I'll be happy. Of course, if I'm going to shoot it, I'm going to be happy with it because it got me excited enough to shoot it, so in that moment.
I'll tell you the only animal, I've killed several species, and the only animal, including, my first whitetail as a little kid, like the only animal to ever bring me to tears when I shot my first one was an elk.
Is it because of like the adventure of it, or the size of them, or the childhood dream of it, or what is it, you think?
I think yes, all of it.
Okay.
The 4x4 I shot, we hunted 11 days hard, and we're on bigger bulls, and we were coming down to crunch time. And, my dream as a kid growing up was always to go elk hunting. And the fact that it finally came full circle and I got that opportunity and I got to shoot an elk, like all that emotion and everything just hit me. And, at that time I was filming for a show, and like a camera's right in my face, and I was 30 years old and trying to hold my stuff together because I knew, it's for the world to see, and you're choking down, your emotions. But, it's even still, I've killed 3 elk now, and I've been part of 7 elk kills. Every single one is just very emotional and rewarding, and you put so much into it. And I put a lot into my whitetail hunting, but man, there's nothing compares to it for me.
So you're telling me right now you drop whitetails for elk? If it was a forever thing,
I would never shoot another whitetail in my life if I could hunt elk every year, bow hunt elk every year in September, someplace in New Mexico or Arizona.
No, that's bold, but I get it though, because like Clint Casper's bit by the same bug, and I consider him to be more of a mule deer guy, but he loves his elk, and it's funny when you talk to guys out west, and I don't know if you have this same experience, Damian, with like your buddies out there, but there's both mule deer and elk guys, but it seems like if you ask one of them, what would you rather, mule deer or elk? A lot of the guys lean mule deer, or at least in the circle that I'm friends with. And then it's like, elk are cool, but elk, like you guys find them cooler than we find them cooler, but that's not true across the board.
I probably shouldn't even say that, but like to me, after hunting, have hunted mule deer, like they don't.
Just say it. Come on.
All right. So I feel like mule deer are dumber, and like they let you get away with more. Yeah. And it makes stalking them funner or more fun, because you can get away with it and you get in tight and you can make more mistakes. I mean, somebody's going to be running me down. No, you're full of crap.
Yeah.
That's my opinion with the two species. Whereas elk, you can get away with a lot with elk just because they're so noisy, and you can be noisy. But it maybe high country is a different story when you're dealing with the tough terrain and stuff. But I don't know. I
hear you. I get what you're saying. I know where your hesitance.
Like and it's hard to say 300 inches, but what else are you going to kill with 300 inches of antler?
Right. That's true. And I get where your hesitance is from, because there's a controversy there. It's like, oh, mule deer are easier. They do let you buy. They seem a little more delayed, whereas a whitetail lives around more pressure, I think, generally.
Yeah.
So I think that's why. They're on edge all the time.
And they don't like. And elk will do that too. You bump them and they'll run out there 30, 40, 50 yards and stop and turn around and look at you like, what was that? Whereas whitetails, there's none of that. They're leaving the county.
Yeah, they're just out of there, and they'll worry about what you are later if they see you again. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I get it. I get the hesitance, but I hear, I hate to even say this too. Here, I'll say some controversy here to even it out. I've heard guys say, why would you want to hunt a big dumb animal like an elk? I've heard hardcore mule deer. I won't name his name, but a guy out of Idaho and one guy out of Wyoming said that before. That's a big dumb animal that calls back at you. It's like a turkey. He goes, mule deer are hard to hunt and they're elusive. So that's just everybody's opinion. It's funny to bring it up, but I get both the allure. But if I lived out there, I'd hunt it all.
Right? Yeah. Fixed blade mechanicals.
That's exactly what it is. Big antlers are awesome. If turkeys had antlers, it'd be a lot different.
Yeah, I might care then about turkeys.
But I'll tell you, after doing this Turkey OG series, I went out, and I'm a bow guy. I hunt. I'm an archery guy. I went out after that Turkey OG series and I bought a shotgun for turkeys.
Yeah, I'll punch one in the face.
I was just motivated. You know what I mean? And I don't know anything. I know a little bit about firearms, more than I give myself credit for, probably. But when it comes to like chokes and barrel length and what I should get and stuff, I took Austin and Ross with me, and we went to Bass Pro. Yeah, I'm like, hey, what gun's good where I'm not going to break the bank? And then pick me out a choke, and then what shell should I get? So they pretty much shopped for me, and I just paid for it. So
they made you pay for some TSS shells.
I didn't. They didn't have 3.5 inch. They had 3 inch, but they're like, nah, you want 3.5. But I got a big, like, what is it? It's a Carlson's. It's for the Winchester loads. The Longbeard XRs. I don't know. It's a 650 choke. I don't know what it means, but they said it'll shoot a tight one out there pretty far. So
yeah. Well, that's cool.
We'll see. I don't know, but I'm excited for my elk hunt. So this story is getting me even more ramped up for that, and just getting prepared mentally and knowing what to think about and what to expect.
I got about 20 days or so till I find out on the New Mexico lottery this year. I put in for antelope. It's never been high on my priorities, but the unit out there, it's a big spot and stock unit because of the way the topography is. So that piques my interest. I figure at some point I'm going to want to kill an antelope. So I put in for antelope too. So hopefully I draw one of those tags, and
cool.
If not,
can you draw both?
You can, but I mean, the likelihood of that happening, honestly, I have very low expectations on my elk tag because 2 of the last 3 years I've drawn. So
because it's 50-50 there, right?
What's that?
Is it 50-50 draw odds?
No. It's
are we talking New Mexico, Arizona?
New Mexico. It's a straight lottery in New Mexico. So you gotta, depending on what unit you're putting in for, season, it all varies. More people apply for second archery season because it's closer to the rut or peak rut, and so you got more applications in that season. So you can favor your odds depending on where you're going, what season you're putting in for, and all that. But it's still a minute. I mean, the tags that my buddy and I drew last year, and this wasn't a party tag. There's only like 3 non-resident tags available in that unit, and we drew 2 of the 3.
Okay.
Like the odds of that is absolutely, like, I called him to like rub it in his face that I drew that tag, and he's like, I think I drew 2. I'm like, get out of here.
Well, it's cool you guys both killed. I mean, the likelihood of that happening again, I mean, could happen, but probably not likely. So you guys capitalized on it and got it done. Congrats, man.
Yeah. Thanks.
So that's awesome. That's your 3rd bull, you said?
Yeah. Yep.
So you're going every year if you can.
I will apply every single, because it's straight lottery. You don't have to play the point system.
Yeah.
I hate the point system, and everyone's like, oh, you need to apply all these other states. Well, I've had the greatest experience of my life in New Mexico, and it's straight lottery. Okay, it's small odds, but I'd rather know that there's a chance that I might draw versus knowing I'm not going to draw for 8 to 10 years. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like applying and knowing you're not going to get a tag is pretty heartbreaking to me. So I'd rather apply knowing there's a chance versus applying and not. And yeah, you could spread it around and eventually, but I don't really care to hunt anywhere else. So
I respect that. I think that's, you're straight up about it, because you know what I'm doing? I just bought Colorado points and Utah points, and I'm spending that money, and I'm doing this whole, I can't go this year. I mean, I haven't technically drawn my Wyoming tag yet. There's a chance that I might not, but I had enough points to draw it. I think I will, but I guess there's a chance that I don't draw, and then I'm going to go, oh crap. And then, whatever, it is what it is at that point.
With Isaiah, a lot of people hear my stories and they're all gung ho to go apply for New Mexico. And they're like, I want to go this year. And I'm like, well, that's fine, but it's 100% lottery. So unless you're going to fork out for a private ranch tag or something like that, you're not going this year. So the way New Mexico works, you just have to apply every single year. And if you get drawn, whether it's convenient or it's affordable or whatever the case may be, if you got to sell your firstborn child that year or whatever to go, you make it happen. That's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah.
So if whether it's convenient or whatever, if I draw, I make it happen. So
see, that's good too. I think a lot of people, I mean, there's your hardcore guys, like, you know, guys like you, guys that like Clint, guys like Devin, guys like Trey. I mean, all these other guys you see that are successful out west, they make the time to go and commit to these trips and commit to being dedicated to actually make these things they think about all year or they dream about as a kid. They commit to making them happen. And then you have your guys that never make it a priority, but always wish they would have gone. And then the guys that are probably telling you that you're lucky, but you know, you sacrifice certain things to go when those are a lot of people. I'll go with you. And then they never, you know, where are them guys at when you're putting gas in your truck ready to go out there or whatever, you know?
Exactly.
There's a big difference, you know, actually doing things and putting them off, you know, and next thing you know, 10, 15, 20 years goes by and they're kicking their own ass. So you got to just go.
Yep. Got to make it happen. So that was my elk hunt. Again, hope to go again this year and have more stories to tell. Then I came back to Ohio and our archery season opened and I was after. So last year when I killed this buck, November 2nd, I kept monitoring his brand new farm. I just started hunting and I kept, you know, Ohio's a bait state. So this property I was feeding in multiple different spots, kind of inventorying what type of deer is on this place. And the week after gun season. So, let me back up a small bit, but so I shot him November 2nd, November 11th to the 18th. I had a pretty big group of new bucks, mature bucks cruising through and sticking around for a day or two and then leaving, you know?
Yeah.
So mental note to that. And then, the week after gun season, this buck showed up and he was pretty nice. And once he showed up, he started hitting food plots and feeders and he was regular almost every day, every night. Lots of daylight movement in the one corner of the property, just an overgrown kind of thick, nasty, but around a bunch of bedding and stuff. And I kind of kept tabs on him and figured if he survived, that would probably be the buck that I would want to hunt the following year. Ended up in March 17th. I got a picture of a buck with bloody pedicles right when your camera's switching to infrared. So it was still colored and you could tell by his head, he was a bigger deer. The only bigger deer on the property that was regular was him. So I figured it had to be him. And with my other cameras on the property, it always seemed like he was coming from the east. So I went down that day, parked my truck and walked 200 yards and found both of his sheds. So that was kind of pretty awesome.
Yeah. Those are the sheds we're looking at.
That's these ones right here. Yeah. And, you know, split brows, solid mass.
Were they laying together?
They were about 10 feet apart. I hate shed hunting on sunny days. And, I saw this one shining in the sun and I walked up and I picked it up and I was all excited. Once the buzz wore off, I'm like, I wonder if the other one's around here. And I looked up 10 feet away and it was laying right there. So so that kind of confirmed. So the sheds scored 157, and I thought he was a 3-year-old. Honestly, he just had like this long, skinny snout. His body said he was kind of a 4-year-old, but he had this long, skinny snout. And I just I thought, okay, maybe he's 3. It's post rut. You know, it's hard. It's late season.
Yeah, hard to tell about that time.
Right. I wasn't 100% sure. Had no history with him, obviously being a new property. So the next spring, I put in food plots. Planted clover in the bottom field where he was had turnips the year before, and he kind of regulared. I wanted to have some summer type of attractant there to kind of try to hold him there.
Yeah.
Had minerals out up in the back corner of the property where he was daylighting. I put in like a little 1 acre food plot of turnips and brassicas, and I felt like that was probably where I would probably kill him.
Yeah.
I built a box blind in there. Like I was going all in, right?
Mm-hmm.
No photos of this deer all summer. All summer. Got one photo of him, 2 photos of him. It was a camera on burst, and he was walking down a trail on July 3rd, and he's swinging his head, and the pictures are kind of blurred because it's infrared, but you can tell he's heavy, he's wide, and he's got a start to a split on a G2, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, man, that's got to be him. You know, there's no other deer that could be. And that was it. No more photos.
What a tease.
And what a total tease.
See, you know, Damian, from my perspective, living in Illinois where we're not allowed to like supplemental feed or run feeders or bait or anything like that, like I wish we could really bad for summer pictures and inventory and, you know, herd health. I would think that if he was there on all that late season when he shed, that it would be knockout. Like you just have pictures of him.
And that's what I was banking on. But at the same time, there's no ag in the area. The closest ag, like the fields on that property are just hay fields. And they were just crappy hay fields. I put in clover and alfalfa in the one. It was a 5 acre field, and I planted that.
Did you just seed into the hay?
No, I killed it. Well, I had planted it in turnips the fall before.
Gotcha.
And then I went in and planted it into clover alfalfa early in March. And all the ag's about a mile away. So my guess is, hindsight is, he was a mile away where the beans were probably all summer.
That makes sense.
All fall. And I had nothing to go off of. I was actually barely hunting. My buddy was hunting a mega giant, like 195, just stud deer, and he would randomly on one of his other properties have this other like 180 inch deer show up. It wasn't regular. I hunted in there a couple times just for like a you know, wishful thinking more than anything, you know, just because I wanted to be out hunting, and he was on a giant and was like, hey, you know,
anything can happen.
Lucky.
Yeah.
So didn't hunt much. My hope was that week, November 11th through the 18th, where all them new deer moved in the year before, that would be the window when he would show up. So, was kind of banking on that. And as that time frame started coming, the areas where I would get him in transitions and funnels coming through, I would start kind of just hunting in those areas, hoping to get a glimpse of him, you know. But no luck. And then on November 14th, I hunted in the one funnel. At noon, I got down, went to lunch, changed my clothes at the barn, drove out, went into town, got something to eat. As I'm sitting there, I was like, oh, I wonder what, I passed up a section. So knowing that window was approaching, on the 11th, I went in, and then the corner of that field, the property line is basically the field edge. So I went in, there's no place to hunt there. It's just brushy, nasty stuff. And I went in and just dumped a bag of corn and threw a camera on it right in the corner, just hoping anything cruising through there might coax them in front of that camera.
Right.
Because if, you know, other than that, you're just guessing a trail out of 50 they could be on, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was on Thursday evening. I put that out, and Saturday I hunted. While I was in town at lunch, I opened up my camera. While I was changing my clothes, he was 170 yards away from me, standing in front of that camera in that corn pile with a doe. And at noon, while I was changing to go to lunch. And, you know how it is with the trail camera apps.
I'll drive you nuts.
I opened up the app, and like you get the little tiny tiles with all the photos that are there. And all I saw was giant rack before I even opened the thing. And I'm like, oh, you know? So I open it up, and it's him. And he he stood there. It was on, I think, 1 minute delay. And I think I got like 8 pictures of him there. And he went back into to the north, into the neighboring property. And I like full on went into like, will he come back tonight? I can't hunt there. You know, I'm not a big believer in being able to shoot a big deer on corn piles, you know, anyway.
Yeah.
It does help and it can happen, but I think as a regular, you know, they're more cautious than anything, especially in Ohio when everybody on every 20-acre parcel is doing it.
Yeah. God, I can't even imagine.
So I went in and I'm hoping, okay, I can't even see where I was feeding, but I'm hoping if he comes back, he comes out into that clover alfalfa field that night. And I'm trying to think, okay, I don't have any stands, anything down there to really do this. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I found an old summit climber, didn't even have a seat in it. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to like rig this thing up. Then I didn't have a limb saw. The only tree I could have climbed had limbs going everywhere because it was on the edge of a field, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm like, what am I going to do? So I go back into the guy's cabin and he had one of those ghost blinds, right?
Yeah.
Sitting in
the big mirror looking thing.
I run out there and I hollow out this spot in this pine tree because it's on this west side of this field. It's all pines. And then the neighboring house is literally 90 yards from me. And then, so I hollow out this little spot and I figured if he come out in the field, it was going to be a longer shot. So I made sure I could stand up and get a good, you know, shot process if I needed to. And I'm sitting there that evening. The neighbor guy comes out at like 5 after 5. He's got a mini farm. He's over there feeding ducks and the ducks are screaming and that he's got emus and pigs and yelling at the dogs and banging buckets, you know. And I'm texting my buddy. I'm like, this is a waste. I might as well just leave. Right. And
yeah.
Right as all this is going on, that buck steps out into that field.
I wonder if that guy got him up or something like that.
He was feeding. Like I think he just came back to feed that evening. You know, it was the last 20 minutes of daylight or so. And a little buck came out and he followed the little buck. And then once I looked at my camera, he was actually in the tree line for a few minutes eating corn,
mm-hmm.
but I couldn't see him inside that thicket. And then once he ate some corn, he came out into the clover alfalfa field. And, you know, he's feeding out there and I range him. He was 75, 65, 60. I'm like 60 yards I can do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty solid shot. So I take my time. I get everything ready. I stand up, you know, and I'm totally engulfed in this pine tree. I just have a little window I can shoot out. And I draw back and like I settled a pin on him. And I think in the back of my head, I settled it right to the bottom of his chest. And I thought, he's not going to react with all this neighbor noise going on. He's never going to hear this shot. So I bring it back up to center mass of that chest cavity and I touch it off and he ducks my arrow. No clue what happened. He only ran like 15 yards and he stopped and he stood there and actually went back to feeding.
No shit.
Yeah. He had no clue what happened. And then he just kind of walked off. And when it got dark, I eased out, snuck out of there, and hunted that spot the next day, saw him at 100 yards. Then he was gone for 5 days. Then I got a photo of him again in the corner of that field 2 days in a row. And then he was gone 2 days. Then he was back 2 days. And then he found my food plot in the corner that I put in where I thought I was going to kill him. Once he found that, he was every single day within the first hour of dark and the first hour before daylight, every single day.
No kidding.
He would be there. He always came from the north, always left to the north. There was a power line that right on the north side of that food plot that I put in. And he always came from that direction, always left that direction. And I had it narrowed down to like 3 trails that he used. And I kind of felt like I knew where he was bedding, but it's, you know, obviously off the property. So it's only 60 acres I'm hunting.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't go any closer to him. I could try to cut him off trying to come in or trying to get him to stage up or whatever. But, you know, I was hoping for colder weather. And so a couple times he was there just after shooting light. But he was always there, and then he would leave all night long, and then he would show up an hour before, at 5 a.m. and leave by 6. Right. That's kind of the stereotypical pattern that he had. And I had pulled all my trail cameras and focused everything in on this farm. So I had like 15 cameras running on this north end of this farm trying to figure this deer out. Right. And a bunch of cell cameras. And then gun season came. Gun season, I kind of stay out. I don't want to, if he's on the property, I don't want to push him out on the neighboring property.
Let him get a break.
Right. And I just I would drive the area just to see who was hunting, what gates were open, that sort of thing. The buck never changed his pattern all gun season. So I figured there must not have been a lot of pressure going on. Thursday of gun season, he didn't show up till 9 o'clock that night. The rest of gun season, he was right on pattern. Then we had talked before, and I know Mark and Drew and Drury's hate the new moon.
Yeah.
Almost all of my deer are killed on the new moon. So this is going into my new moon window. Not to throw that out there.
Yeah. But Mark's don't have that guy on again. I'm kidding.
You're right.
Yeah.
So the new moon window is there, and Saturday of gun season, my wife has a mini farm, and she's got goats and all kinds of crazy animals.
She's over there hanging out with that other guy with the emus.
Right, yeah, yeah. She should be. Maybe I better keep an eye on it.
Yeah, watch the emu guy.
Although it might get me hunting permission where that buck is coming
There you go. Hey, man, I'll let my wife hang out with you, but I'm going to need to slip in this back 40.
Right. So Saturday of gun season, I'm back there building a barn door for her. I come in just before dark, and I go and take a shower. I open up my cameras, and he's standing in my food plot right at last shooting light on Saturday of gun season. And I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me, right? So now I'm like, okay, maybe I need to hunt tomorrow, and even though it's Sunday of gun season, last day of gun season. So Sunday morning, I go down there, and I had an issue with my tractor. I was meeting a mechanic down there, and on my way down there, the buck didn't show up on my food plot that morning until 6 a.m. He didn't leave till 7, which is shooting light.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, okay, he's close, and he's moving in daylight. He's probably not going to be that far bedded down. I need to hunt tonight. So I went in that night, got in my blind, and I'm sitting there, and I only hunted that spot twice that entire year. And both times I hunted, I saw like 25 deer each night, and they start at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's like every 20 minutes, there's deer coming out in it. Never saw a deer until 3:45 that day. And it was a lone button buck, and he fed around, and he went to the top of the field and laid down. And then about 15 minutes later, a little doe fawn came out, and they met up and they fed around. That was the only deer I seen pretty much the entire night. Then at 5 after 5, a big doe came out, and they all met up, and they're standing in the field, and they're just out there feeding around. And I had a feeder at the north end, and they went up and fed there, and then they came back down, and they're out in the middle of the field, and it's starting to get dark at this point, right? And I'm like, okay, it's not going to happen. And starting to kind of give up hope. Started, you know how it is when you're sitting in a ground blind, you start like packing your stuff away. And
I'm bad at ground blinds, man. I give up so fast at them.
I know. And I'm like putting stuff away, and I just keep watching these deer to make sure they're not hearing me or anything. And all of a sudden that big doe snaps her head up, looks at the power line, and like turns her whole body that direction, full alert. And I'm like, something's coming. So I turn and I look out the window, and I just see him coming across the power line. And, I built that blind in there specifically to kill him. And he comes walking past me right through the lane, right to my right, gets past me, quartering away. And I get ready for him as he's coming in. And when he's walking, quartering away, I'm kind of shooting uphill at him. And the shot goes off. I hear it hit him. He takes off like a bat. And my lighted knock didn't go off, so I didn't see where I hit him, but I knew I hit him. The shot felt good, and I get out, I gave him a few minutes, you know, send all your buddies texts. I just shot him, call my wife, you know, the whole 9 yards. And I get out, I go out, can't find my arrow right away. So I'm looking around. So I shot him with my bow the last day of gun season.
Mm-hmm.
And you're the master of that. You've done that a couple times in the last few years.
Just got to have your tag and blaze orange, man.
Right. And
just to clarify, everybody.
Right. So then I go the direction he ran. I don't find any blood. You know, the brassica tops are giant plates of green.
Yeah.
You think you'd see blood sprayed on them. Don't see any. So now I'm like, oh, maybe the worst happened or something. And I go back. I'm looking around. I find my arrow. I was looking 10 yards away from where I was. You know how it is.
You get what happened is I did that with a buddy last fall, and you just get excited because you're expecting it's in the open. You think you know where he was standing exactly.
Yeah, right.
And
it's dark and you're out there and you think, everything's.
You start to get frantic a little bit and you're like, ah, shit, is it not what I thought? And then, I get it.
So I ended up finding the arrow. The arrow's covered in bright pink blood. I'm like, that's a good sign. So I take the arrow, I stick it in the ground, and I'm like, I'm just going to give him till morning. It was cold, you're into December now.
Mm-hmm.
And go back to my truck. I'm texting all my buddies. We have a group text of some diehards. And I'm like, I'm giving him till morning. I don't know. So my buddy owns a landscaping business, and he calls me. He's like, dude, it's supposed to rain from 2 a.m. till noon, like an inch and a half. And I'm like, I'm like, all right, I'm going to give him as much time as possible. So my buddy Dave that I elk hunt with, he owns property not too far away. He's coming. My buddy Lee's coming. Lee knows a guy who's got a dog that is blood tracking in training.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a pup. It's only 6 months old, but he's found some other deer. And he's like, I'll see if he can come. And my buddy Zach, came. So we had a whole search party. And while I'm waiting, I ran into town, bought a spotlight to go for blood tracking, because all I had was my phone. And they get there at 9:30 that evening. So it's been 4 hours almost at this point. And we start up the field, and at the end of the field, the power line goes up, and I take that spotlight and I kind of shine up the hill, and there's two eyes up there looking at us. And I'm like, oh, there's deer. And then all of a sudden it turns and trots off, and it was a coyote. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of bad sign.
Yeah. Yeah. Austin Chandler flashbacks.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I get up to the top of the hill, and I'm like, the arrow's right over, and my arrow is gone. Nowhere to be found. Like, I stuck it full body weight into the dirt, and the only thing I could think is that coyote smelled the blood on that arrow and carried it off. I haven't gone in there to shed hunt yet. I'm thinking I'll probably find my arrow someplace where that coyote trotted off and dropped it. I don't think he carried it far, but that's the only thing I could figure. So
has to be. Yeah. Or a raccoon tipped it over and
something smelled the blood on it and drug it off.
Yeah.
So we get in there. The dog, like I said, you don't have a lot of hope. He's a pup. He's just excited. He's on like a 30-foot lead or whatever, and he's got a collar with a light at the bottom of his collar. And, they're going around, and the direction the buck went when I made that food plot with my tractor, I pushed everything, kind of windrowed everything. There's only two ways they could go out of that field. And in my excitement, it looked like he was running to the downhill side of it, and that's where I thought he went. Well, it turns out he didn't. He went to the other trail, which my buddy, while we were looking there, my buddy went up there and found just a speck of blood.
Mm-hmm.
So we put the dog on it, and the dog just keeps wanting to go off into the timber, right? And we have no hope in this dog at this point.
Yeah.
He's showing no interest in the
Everybody's kind of shit talking the dog low key.
Right. And we're finding just enough blood and some bubbles and stuff to kind of get us going down this old grown up trail. And the dog, he'd zigzag up there and go up, and he's just more of a nuisance at this point. And then he goes down the hill and into the Moldiflora rows, and the guy has him on that long lead, and he's got Carhartts and stuff on, and he kind of pushes through it, and he's like, your deer's right here. And the dog we were shit talking the dog. I think the dog could just smell the deer and wanted to go to it.
Mm-hmm.
He only ran 80 yards, and the dog just could smell the deer and wanted to go straight to it and could care less about the blood on the ground. And we were trying to get him to follow the blood, right?
Yeah.
So we get through all that brush, and the dog's just standing on the deer, and the light's like shining on him, and at that point you're just ecstatic. You walk up there, and he's just a massive, big old buck, and bigger than I expected. I thought he was 170-ish. He ended up he's 177 and some change.
Slammer.
Yeah, 45 inches of mass. So you had one mass measurement that was under 5 inches, and it was 4 7/8. The rest of them were all over 5 inches. Jeez, he's a mainframe 10. He's got a kicker off his G2, and then he's got another point that's an inch and some change over here off his main beam. I don't know what sticker point, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Just an absolute giant, 20 inches wide. And the reason we didn't find any blood is I hit him. He was quartering away and shooting uphill at him. So my entrance was low and about 1.5 inches behind the last rib. The entrance was plugged with intestine and the exit was in the shoulder, high in the shoulder. So he fell over, like it was like somebody spilled a 55-gallon barrel of blood right there, but it was just all in his chest cavity. None of it drained out while he was running off. But again, he only went 80 yards, but
beautiful buck.
You never know. You always try to do the right thing, and you don't want to push them, and you know how it goes, and especially with the Austin story and fear of the coyote stuff. And but
you only do what you can, right. And you play it smart. You never know.
You give him time, you go in, you hope you recover your deer, or you push it, you bump him, he runs off, and the coyotes get him anyway. That's kind of the way it. Yeah, it's the good and the bad, I guess.
Well, I mean, and also too, it seems like a waste when that happens, but nothing really gets wasted.
True.
You know what I mean? It's a bummer to let the coyotes get it, but something's fed.
The cycle of life, the circle of life. If you will. The bugs got to eat, the coyotes got to eat, the buzzards got to eat, the possums got to eat. I mean, it doesn't go to waste. Do you get to eat it? No, but something is making that, go into back into the circle of life. But so he was a pretty awesome buck.
I like that you Euroed him. Do you ever have plans to shoulder mount him? Because I know you're a big Euro guy in general, aren't you?
Well, I got a lot of deer mounted, a lot of things mounted, and I've made the call actually the year before when I shot this guy. I said, I'm not mounting another deer unless he's 160 or better. Mm-hmm. This guy scored 159 and 7/8. And I'm like, I said 160 or better. So that's where I'm at. So my taxidermist, he sends the hides out to be tan, and I do like Euros. I do the Euros myself. So I Euro them. That way I can rub on them and take naps with them and drag them around for friends to see and all that stuff while they're in the process. And then when he gets the hides back and the forms ordered and everything, he calls me, and then
you do get to enjoy like a Euro and a skull plate differently than a shoulder mount. Like shoulder mounts are beautiful and they're classy and they look great and they're fun for everyone to enjoy.
You can't do this.
You can't do that.
You can't just sit and feel the weight and the grip them. And when they're up on the wall, you can't really just love on them. Mm-hmm. Like there's just something about being able to do that you can't do to an actual mount. So I do like that. And then once the excitement wears off, but once some of the excitement tames down, we'll say, it's ready to be mounted, and then you put it on the wall, and all your friends have been able to hold it and hang on to it. And how them people take their deer and drop them off at a taxidermist and don't see them for a year. I don't know how you do that, because I can't do that.
First thing I do is I get my skull plates, and then when Old Barn calls me and they're like, hey, it's time, I'm like, okay, I'll drop off the kids, give them the racks back, and then I only got to wait a little bit of time before they're mounted. I'm just like, you call me when you need it.
Right. So. My taxidermist, like, he knows. He'll be like, so I'm getting ready to mount your deer here, and I don't have any antlers.
Yeah, I'll be right over.
Yeah.
Dude, killer season, man. A big-ass elk, big-ass whitetail. I mean, on fire. Hope you can do it again this season. But you're one of them consistent killers, man. So it's always good to get some stories from you. And I appreciate the support that you provide us at Working Class and at the shows and online and just being part of our community, man. So congratulations and super happy for you.
Thanks, man.
Hey, if you want to shout anything out, like your socials or anything, go ahead and do it.
You got Damian_hunts on Instagram. Facebook, I kind of leave to closer friends and family and not just total strangers. And then you got Isaiah Gonzalez if you want to follow some cool stuff for elk hunting. You got Primetime Outdoors is his Instagram and his Facebook. And like right now he's just posting crazy shed hunting videos and, just obnoxious stuff that just makes you dream about elk all the time. So he's a big antler buyer too. So he'll post videos where he's parked along the interstate buying antlers from people. He just posts, I'll be at the intersection of whatever, and people bring him the antlers to sell, and he buys and sells and does the whole 9 yards. So
very cool.
It's just cool to follow him along. Andy's just an absolute beast in the mountains when it comes to finding giant elk. So
awesome.
Other than that, just Damian_hunts on Instagram. That'll do.
Cool. I'll link it all. I'll put it all in the description of this episode. That way it's all there.
Yeah, I'll send you some of them videos and some trail camera photos and stuff of this buck. And
yeah, it's perfect, man. Cool. Well, thanks, man. Thanks, everyone, for watching and listening. If you're chasing elk, let us know about it in the comments on these episodes. Maybe Damian will reach out to you, give you some advice, do's and don'ts of, from his experiences on his first elk hunts. And let's interact with the community there on DeerCast and on Working Class Bowhunter YouTube and all our socials. So thanks, everyone, for listening, watching. We appreciate you. And thanks, Damian, for telling those stories. And I'll end it with this. Go shoot a giant. We love you guys. Thanks.